talking about, most people talk about these folks as criminals. They're just trying to get by. You know, they're trying to live their life in a way that they think is most advantageous for them and their families. And if you think about it in those terms, I think most Americans will have some degree of empathy, if not sympathy, for the situation. And it will at least allow us to talk about some of these issues of basic fairness and justice, and hopefully allow us to get around the demagoguery that gets in the way of talking about solutions. So I've talked a little bit about our legislative effort. I'm happy to answer your questions. I will tell you I know more about what we're doing in D.C. than what our litigators are doing, but again, thank you for having me here. Yeah, you had your hand up halfway through.
Hi, Karen. I had a little trouble hearing you, so I may be asking questions you've answered.
I'll take another half hour.
I have a granddaughter who lives in Mexico. She is an American citizen. She's fallen very much in love with a young Mexican. They will be marrying him. What are his chances of getting back without problem? What should he do?
Well,
if they want to live in the States.
Well, you know, I would tell you they got to play by the rules. And
what are the rules?
Well, the rules. You go to the embassy and you start from there.
Yeah.
But where you start getting into trouble is if you just try and skirt the rules and get it done on your own. But as a practical matter, it's going to be a while. You know, that's my understanding. And you know, this is one of these things I was saying. I can tell you more about what we do in the Washington office than what the legal people do. My recommendation would be to, number one, get the rules from the embassy, and you know, they're dealing with this stuff all the time. They are swamped with this kind of stuff, and go from there. And he's got to hope that if there ever is a solution to the existing issue of the 12 million undocumented here, that doesn't somehow harm his ability to get in.
One other hypothetical question that's always intrigued me. What if somebody just got in a boat, and a rowboat or whatever, and came across the line, you know, Florida or wherever, and landed on the beach? What happens next then?
Well, yeah, it depends on if they get to the beach or not. If they are in the water and not quite on the beach, they just go straight back. The rights attach, or at least this is how it's been interpreted. Rights attach once you make it to U.S. soil. Once you set foot on U.S. soil, that's when the rights attach. At least that's how it's been interpreted. And the Coast Guard or whoever it is that would pick you up offshore, they'll just send you right back if you're not on the soil.
But if you're on the soil,
well, then you go to detention.
Then you get the
what a lot of fun. No, you know, if you get to the beach and you don't get caught, well, then you're part of the crowd,
that's
right?
What I'm wondering.
But if you get to the beach and you're picked up, you go into the detention facility.
You are picked up. What happens?
Yeah, you go to the detention facility.
Detention.
Yes, and there are a number of federal detention facilities, and most people are being held in state and local jails. In some cases, intermingled with the criminal population.
Went down the street, applied for a job. Do skills happen any of these youngsters?
I'm sorry.
Do skills matter at all in the selection process?
There's a greater chance the more training and professional skills you have, there's a better chance of you coming up. Yeah, Joe.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm glad you're still with us.
Yeah. So am I.
You're doing some good work in the national office. You have a little bit more faith in our elected officials than I do in terms of being of goodwill
for public consumption
and this kind of thing. But it seems to me about this immigration issue, what it's all about is diverting people's attention. Way down the list, it's number 10 on people's list of priorities of what they're more concerned about. It's diverting attention from the economic situation that we find ourselves in, the war, and health care, it seems to me, and I think, you know, Republicans are primarily using this issue as a diversionary tactic. They're behind for the most part. I know there's some conservative Democrats on board too. Have y'all found any way to counter that, that this is a political issue, that it's not really that serious a problem as they make it out to be, and what type of strategies are you using to deal with that?
The strategies that we're using, I tried to summarize, but it has to do with focusing on the way we talk about the issue. And we would be perfectly happy if none of these anti-immigrant bills came up. We wouldn't have to fight against them. And in fact, most of them are not going anywhere. Perhaps for some of the reasons you just stated. But there are some that seem to have legs. And so when we get in that situation, we have to react to them. That's the reactive side of our effort. And in fact, the reactive side is the majority of our effort in the immigration area right now. And the way we react to it is by getting away from talking about immigrants, non-immigrant citizens, and talking about some other aspect of the proposal at hand. And so with the SAVE Act, we talk about this database. In other kinds of legislative acts, we try to talk about fairness to similarly situated individuals. We just get away from talking about immigrant versus non-immigrant versus citizen. But I think what you're driving at is how do we stop these proposals from being made? And you know, I haven't figured that out. I don't know how we stop Mr. Schuler or his colleagues from advancing a bill such as has been proposed.
How the Redskins strike?
I don't have a good answer for that.
Yeah. I just wish we had get into more of a dialogue, I guess, on the national stage. You know, I know it's hard to get the media attention to do it when you got people, you know, who are demagoguing this issue every day. But if we could get out there somehow, or get a spokesperson, you know, someone who's not folks affiliated with the ACLU, who work for the ACLU, to expound on this.
Well, you know, the funny thing is, you know, a lot of times, a lot of the issues we're involved in, ACLU is not the right leader because there's so much baggage associated with the organization.
Yeah.
But this is one of the situations where ACLU is actually a little better leadership organization, because most of the other organizations are immigrant-related organizations, and that starts the conversation on the wrong plane in order to try to advance it. So, you know, we've got our chief lobbyist on immigration issues, a woman named Joanne Lynn, and she's just a firebrand, and she's doing a great job at trying to pull together all these different organizations around the issues that are going on in
Appreciate all the work.
Yes.
In addition to the healthcare issues, I'm curious about what we're doing around detentions, like due process issues, how long people are detained without any kind of process, that, you know, being put in detention or deported without notifying their families. You know.
Yeah, that's the really big proactive issue that needs to be dealt with, is addressing all of the due process issues associated with detention. You know, how do you get into detention? How do you get out of detention? How do you make sure that you have lawyers representing people before they're deported? How do you make sure that people aren't deported before there are any proceedings whatsoever? And we, working with AILA, Immigration Law Association, and a number of other organizations, we've drafted a fairly comprehensive piece of legislation that is not going to go anywhere. It hasn't been filed, you know, but it's on the table for discussion. But that's the big proactive issue for us on this. You know, we've got a clear fight, clear legitimate interest in those kind of issues on the immigration, in that larger immigration discussion.